was, and was to say to you in this period of lockdown, because I imagine Gundog people generally can't do as much with their dogs as they would normally be doing now.
Yes.
So what would be your focus in training?
That's a really good question, because you're absolutely right. And Gundog people, I can only talk personally for an HP as being an HPR person. Obviously, having my time in Scotland cut short, what I would normally be doing at this point would be a lot of hunting work, because we would be going into well, almost coming to the end, I suppose, but a short period of having our pointing test competitions, which is our dogs being assessed on their natural hunting ability and steadiness and stylishness and everything else. But it's there's no retrieving, no shooting, and it is just the dog naturally running and hunting, and that's what we would normally be working towards. However, if you're really responsible about all that, depending on how the year has fallen, you would be probably looking to finish your hunting training by mid-April, really, at the latest. That's when all the grouse counting and everything should be finished, because obviously the birds are starting, although they've paired up, but they're starting to nest now, and the last thing you want to do is have your dog marauding or hunting across a field and potentially disturbing a nesting hen, which they will do. And the hen would go back. I mean, you might have the odd occasion this happens. The hen would go back to a nest, but you don't really want to be doing that. So then it moves you on to probably wanting to really trim up on all your obedience. You know, even with your mature dogs, you can work a lot on your retrieve, your heel work, your making sure your stop is as good as it should be. Because with the best will in the world, certainly in my breed, as the season goes on, they get, you know, really into it. And Margot, my dog I pick up with all the time, yeah, they do a lot of work, and they have to use a lot of their own initiative, but it doesn't do any harm to bring them back and say, okay, you now need to be listening a lot more. And we would normally be going into the working test season.
Do you want to say a little bit more about the difference between an HPR, hunt, point, retreat dog, and the others?
Yes, of course. On the retrieving side, so do we need to mention about pointers and setters, or?
Well, I think just the difference, because I think most people would probably lump gun dogs together. I certainly would have done before I knew you, I think, you know, because it wasn't my bag.
Oh, okay, so within, making it very simple, within the gun dog groups, you've got several breeds that fall within my particular favorite group, which is the hunt, point, retrieve breeds. So these, and they do literally what they're named, hunt, point, retrieve. Those would be your German short-haired pointers, German long-haired pointers, German wire-haired pointers, Weimaraners, Vizslers. A lot of people have come across Vizslers. They're a very, very popular breed. Good, make a good family dog generally. Then there's the little Brittany's. That's probably about it, really. Munsterlanders. So there, and there's a few other, and there's some rarer breeds coming in from Europe that do that. And that is their job: hunt, point, and retrieve. I always think of them as they're like the 3-day event, the equivalent of a 3-day event horse, but in the dog world. You've then got your Labradors, Retrievers, Spaniels. But probably more your Labradors and Retrievers. They are specifically for, if they're being true to type, for the retrieving. You can take a Labrador beating, you can use it for hunting, but they are bred through and through for the retrieving, in which they will do, as we know, all day, every day for as long as possible, and really happily. And then you've got Spaniels, your Cockers, and your Springers, and they retrieve. They hunt, that they quarter as the HPRs do, but in a much smaller, much closer environment. So they're kind of really used as brushing dogs, go through woods to produce the birds for the shoots mostly. But they all have a retrieve element to them, except the pointers and setters, and their job is literally to work on moorland mostly. You wouldn't have a pointer and setter generally working on in our area, you know, like a driven shoot. You might have someone work one on a partridge shoot maybe, or a rough shoot, but you'd need your picking up dog as well, because they will do the hunting and the pointing, be steady to the flush and the fall, but they don't retrieve. That's their main job. Yes, there are people that have trained them to retrieve, because, you know, sure, you could train anything to retrieve, but that's like simplifying it, really. So this time of year, for the pointers and setters, they would normally be having what they call their field trials, really, because they can run their trials, because they're not judged on retrieving, so they can do those at times of the year where we can't. Yeah, but retrieving's an interesting.
So at the moment you would be between seasons now, even if it weren't for lockdown. Is that right?
If we ignored lockdown, we're out of our field trial season, because our field trials are really based on a rough shooting day, so a proper shooting day. We have to have game shot over our dogs for them to be judged accordingly, or to be judged successfully. So the pointing test season is there or thereabouts. Well, the spring pointing test season is sort of coming to an end, if it hasn't finished. Again, it does depend on the year, because it depends on how high your crops are, how far on the birds are in their nesting period, and that you'd be guided from different area in the country by the gamekeepers. To be honest, that would be their job. Obviously they would welcome us onto their land, but they will only welcome us when it's not detrimental to their birds. And then there's normally all summer, sort of late spring, all summer, if you are into working tests, then people can be doing them almost every weekend if they wanted to, and they're prepared to travel.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah, and working tests are like very artificial, but really good, I think. It's just a series of tests. So you will be tested on hunting, but you would have a patch of ground that perhaps lots of other dogs will have run on as well. So it's a hunting test that's not really, it's just whether your dog really gets going and turns correctly into the wind, and how you handle them. And then it's a series, I always think it's like little exercises. You'll then have 3 or 4 retrieving tests, one of which will be a water retrieve. And a judge sets that up for you, and you know, everyone does the same test and you're marked accordingly. Generally marks are out of 100, so it's depending on how they do it. You can often have your highest figure would be on your hunting, so that might be marks out of 30 or 40, and then they split the others accordingly up to 100. But yes, there's a lot of people who don't do field trials or pointing tests but absolutely love the working tests, will really miss this year, miss not being able to do those. Including you? Yes, I don't normally do. This year I was going to do loads. I was determined this was going to be my year. I was going to say, blow everybody else. I'm going to go and do stuff with my baby dog. That's life, isn't it? And then this happens. So what do you think is best use of your time with training your dog, preparing for the fact that next year you will be able to get out and do it, so you can actually get things pretty laid down strongly now, couldn't you? Yes, and that's really got to be my focus. You know, I'm really lucky. I've got a horse field, so I can do, that's where most of my work's going to happen now. And in the garden, I'm going to do lots of steadiness. Kitty, my youngest, she's lovely, but once she gets busy on focused on something, she's pointing beautifully, she hunts beautifully, she doesn't chase, she stops and watches the birds away, but she's not a natural to sit when they flush, and she knows what the stop whistle means, and we work very hard at that. But that, yes, that is a real challenge. So actually, what are the steadiness exercises that you'll focus on most, do you think? Okay, with her, I have to make it quite simple, I think, because she's had so much interruption in her training. So just as we sort of get going with one thing and another, health issues and stuff, we've never really, I don't feel, every time we've got to a really good point, it's sort of gone back to square one. So I'm going to work, I'm going to do small stuff in the garden, and I would make it initially, so I want her to sit or down in a stay, or I'll do both. And then I will literally just throw dummies, so our canvas dummies around her. If I think she's going to be a bit, and she would do that, actually she should be able to do that side of it, standing on her head, and she has to watch them all go out, and that's fine, she stays there, and then I'll go and collect them. And I might even do things like, as I go out and collect them, I throw it back to where I was originally standing, and then I'll walk to the next one. So do everything to make it as hard for her as possible. And I'm going to do that with tennis balls as well, because I never really let my dogs have balls, because Gundog wise it's not supposed to be their best thing because of the way they hold them. They can mouth and fiddle with them quite a lot, and we try and discourage that. But she loves the ball, so I will, once I'm sure that she's steady and listening, I'll then really ramp it up for her by tennis balls rolling past her, going over her, and again she can't have them. She's a really keen retriever, so but the steadiness is also so very important. But my aim for the steadiness and for all of that is that when I have her sat out there and I maybe throw a dummy or a ball that way and one that way, what I want to be able to do with her, if I can direct her to go and retrieve either of them, and she'll do it as good as gold. I want to be able to, which I could always do with Margot and Ida from like 6 or 8 months. That just shows how different they all are. As I send her to go, right, I want to go, as she's going, I want to go, stop. Actually, I want you to take that one. Now, Margot and Ida can do that and have always been able to do that standing on the head. Kitty, oh my goodness, no, because she's like, the brake's off, I'm gone, I'm on it. That's just her. So that's what we're going to work towards.
So how would you simplify that exercise, Caroline? How would you break that down for her to make it possible?
I think, what I will do with her, because I need to really make sure I'm in control of it, I will make sure that I can stand in her path. So I will make her stay and I'll send it that way. And at the moment, because I don't want to be, it's very easy. I could really shout, tell her to stop and everything, but it's not how I want to be training this, because I really want her to be thinking and working out for herself more. Because I think that's the only way I'm going to tap into her properly.
Yes,
so
she's so clever.
Yes, and she's so clever and she's so honest that even if it's not what I want, if it's what she wants, she will just do it 110%, won't she? So I don't think she means to be brutally naughty. I think it's just like, yes, okay, I'm gone. So I need to just try and use her enthusiasm to get it right. But I think, I'm thinking on my feet here, because I have been thinking a lot about what I'm going to do. And I think I'm going to sit her out, throw something to the left, throw something to the right. Now, in all situations, normally Gundog wise, not in all situations, you would normally make a purposeful decision not to send the dog right. You'd go left, because the dog's focus is generally on the last one you threw, isn't it? So if I've sent left first, I would try and send left, but I'm going to walk so that I'm near, well, I can't be nearer it, but I need to sort of somehow get myself in a way that I can get in front of her if I can, or at least be there close enough to intimidate her enough to make her think, oh, hang on, what's going on? Stop. And then send her back the other way. But I have to let you know how that goes, because I haven't actually put that into practice yet.
Okay, well, that'll be exciting then. We'll look forward to hearing. We can do a little add-on to this podcast. So I'm sure we'll do another one anyway. I'm sure it'll be so popular. We'll have to do another one.
Yes, or not. But going back to, if you were wanting to do the steadiness, if you were starting off, maybe haven't done anything like that before, you could make it easy by just throwing whatever you're throwing just to your side, so that you can step in the way and not let the dog get to it.
Yeah, literally block them. Yeah.
And then gently put them back. And you might have to do that quite a few times, because it's quite different to what we would normally do. We normally want them to go, don't we, the minute we retrieve down. But yes.
And what other steadiness exercises will you focus on in this time?
I suppose I'm sort of thinking of it personally for Kitty, it's stop. But so lots of things. I mean, I always have my whistle on. I think when you've got GSPs, you never go anywhere without your whistle on. So even if they're playing in the garden, you know, which mine will play for a bit, I'll blast my stop whistle. I've got to try and make sure that every time she's doing something, even when she's on free time, she thinks, oh, okay. She knows what it means. It's her concentration, but she's very babyish, isn't she? So
so bringing that into everyday life and everyday emotional events for her, I guess, to get her more compliant or more flexible or responsive, I guess, is what you're saying, isn't it?
Yes, she doesn't. I mean, they are so different, but from the first time I took Ida out and she was on the grouse moor, and the minute she got near the birds, her instinct was almost to drop. But certainly if they took off, she just dropped automatically. It's some of them it's instinctive, some of them it's not, but it's much harder when it's not. But Kitty was really late pointing as well, so I've got to give her a little bit of a break, and that's another really good learning curve, because Margot and Ida were easy by comparison, but Kitty, she has everything in there, and she's a really lovely stylish pointer, but it's been late coming through. I don't know why that is. I haven't done anything different with her, but they're all different. I think that's really important to bear in mind as well.
Yeah, every one of yours has been very, very different to train, haven't they?
Yes, really. I don't quite know why that is. They are all related, but then maybe they've all come close enough together that I'm more aware of how different they are. Whereas
probably,
if you perhaps wait till your dog's 10 and you get a puppy, with the best will in the world, you have forgotten a lot of. I mean, I find 2 or 3 years down the line you forget, or you want to go quicker than you should. But
so if there's anyone listening to this that's got a nice young Gundoggy type dog, whatever sort it was, and maybe has done some basic training but actually wants to start thinking about how can I start preparing the ground for the Gundog work, whatever it may be, what would you suggest they work on at the minute in terms of being in their garden or a local field? Or
okay, well, I think it's quite simple for us Gundog people, but it's really hard to get properly on the day. Heel work, off-lead heel work is really, really important. Sitting at the drop of a hat. If you can get every time you stop that they sit, you can't always be concentrating on your dog fully on the shooting field, and the nicest thing you can have is a dog that's steady. It doesn't go until you tell it to, and that's why all these little exercises of throwing things past them are going to be so important. So you could even starting your steadiness training, I guess, if you've got someone that can help you, it'd be better, because you could just have your dog or young dog sat at heel, and maybe someone else can be throwing something not close to them, a bit like we do when we're doing distractions for stays. Get someone else doing something so you can gently correct them. No, you can sit and stay and watch, but you're not going anywhere. So that sort of thing. So heel work, steadiness, recall. I mean, I know we do lots of other things, but truthfully, if you only almost need 2 things in life with any dog, don't you? If you can stop it and recall it under any circumstance whatsoever, everything else you could easily do, couldn't you? But and that's only 2 asks, isn't it? But blimey, 2 really big asks.
Huge asks. And I think there's a lot of misconception that gun dogs need to hunt in order to express themselves and be natural, and that's what people who go in the field let their gun dogs do in order for them to learn. So do you want to say a little bit about that, Caroline? Because I'm sure you'd have something to say about that.
Yes. I mean, there will be old school or people that are far better at training HPRs than I am that potentially will do that, but but that's not your first dog, and that's maybe what they do in some of the best training kennels in Germany and things like that, because they want the dogs to get out, they want them to hunt, but they understand massively what they're unleashing and how to reel that in. For most of us, we don't really understand what potentially we might be unleashing if we just let our dog go out and hunt without having any control, and potentially you are going to spend the rest of its life trying to get it back under control. So there's that real balance. Oh, it's such a balance. I mean, I do lots and lots of obedience, as you know, for me, but then hopefully that gives me the courage that when I think, let's let them go a little bit and see where we're at, I know even if the worst happens and they chase a hare or something like that, which you hope not, but chances are any decent dog is going to do that once or twice, and then obviously you would train that accordingly. But I know that they are going to come back because they know their recall. So even if they forget themselves for a moment, but it is about just getting your basics in, building that relationship that you two have got, because HPRs particularly can be incredibly independent, particularly German Shorthair Pointers. So if they don't really care whether they're with you or not, well, yeah, it doesn't make for a very nice time at all. So I'm not of the school to just go out and let them go and see what happens. Not until I know that I've got a fairly good basis, and then under very controlled conditions. And down around here where we live, you've got to be so careful, because the way they can run, you know, I'm lucky I live in the country, but I'm never far from a road, and I'm never far from, well, actually it could be the quietest road, but it's only got to have the wrong car at the wrong time, and you've got a dead dog, and that's more important than anything, isn't it? Keep them safe.
Keep them alive is good.
If you can.
Even Kitty. Yes, even Kitty, who does try and kill herself on a regular basis.
Yes, seems to, doesn't she?
Yeah, she has had her health issues.
Bless her.
I think that's actually brilliant. I think what will be fascinating is to hear people's feedback from our little podcast that will hopefully, I'll get it out on to the Facebook pages later today, and I think it'd be great to see if we get what questions we get back, and we could maybe do a follow-up one. And I think, knowing you'll listen to it back and then go, oh, I want to say this, that and the other. But I think it's okay to drip feed it out there the same as we would to the dogs. So I think that is just brilliant for today, Caroline. Thank you so much. And
you're really welcome.
Amazing to talk to you. And I think what might be nice is that you sent me a lovely video over earlier of Kitty doing her running thing. I can't think what you call that now.
That might be hunting. And quartering.
Might be hunting and quartering. And I could maybe, if I'm really clever, I might be able to link it to this feed, and people could see Kitty in her very natural environment doing what Kitty does best. And she's amazingly good at it.
Oh, bless her. I'm very disappointed to be missing the pointing test with her, because I think she's just coming just about right, and she can run as a junior this year. She's in with the big grown-ups next year, so she's missed her junior time, which she's so brilliant. I'm sure she'll be amazing up against the grown-ups. Touch wood. If you do manage to put that on of her, can you just cut that end bit off, because it gets I stopped. I just right at the end it looks untidy, because I stopped her at that point because I wanted her back in, because she hadn't been running for that long, and I was not wanting to overrun her, and then it goes a little bit untidy because I kind of stop her and then call her in, and so
I'll have a look and see what bit. I don't think I got right to the end, so I'll check that out.
It was only 53 seconds, Avril. Come on.
Well, I didn't get to the end of it. The trouble is my bloody Wi-Fi takes so long to download things. But I will watch it right through. And I'll sort it out when I put it with this.
Oh, okay. And
or you can even do it and send it again.
I could cut it down for you, couldn't I? And maybe I could also try and get someone to video me doing Kitty, doing the steadiness.
I'm just going to stop recording. Hang on. Let me stop my recording. Yeah.